he really showed, had Colonel Parker let him venture out into some more, more material that would challenge him as an actor, I mean, he really would have been right up there.
Yeah, I believe so too, because he loved films.
Yeah.
Priscilla tells the stories about him watching Patton over and over and over and memorizing George C. Scott's words, and he'd be sitting in the back of the theaters reciting it, and he loved movies.
Well, boy, that would have been an interesting Elvis Presley as Patton. Would have been different.
That would have been a difference.
In that moment, in a flash of lightning, I watched that skinny boy in the pink suit transform into a superhero.
Well, you may go to college, you may go to school, you may have a pink Cadillac, but don't you make nobody's fool now, baby. Come back, baby, come. Come back, baby, come. Come back, baby, I wanna play Halloween. Well, listen and I'll tell you, baby, what I'm talking about. Come on back to me, little girl, so we can play some house now, baby. Come back, baby, come. Come back, baby, come. Come back, baby, I wanna play house with you. Wanna play house?
What are they hollering at? The wiggle. The what? Them girls won't see you wiggle. Move, man. Do more. Much more. Man, do it again.
Well, I sure wanna say, baby, I don't want you to know. Come on back, let's play the house. We can do what we did before now, baby. Come back, baby, come.
Welcome to the Actor's Side today. Well, he has been the talk ever since this movie opened earlier this year. Elvis, of course, I'm talking about, and its star is right here, Austin Butler. Welcome. And congratulations. Since last we talked, just before the movie was opening, there was a lot of anticipation, and then it became a smash hit.
Man, I'm so happy. You never know how a movie's going to turn out.
No.
You work so hard, and it's really just meant the world to me how people have received it.
And the reaction to your performance here, I mean, playing somebody as iconic as Elvis Presley is walking a tightrope, I imagine, from your point of view as an actor,
That's the exact analogy I've been using, actually.
It is sort of, right? It's a tough, it's something you're walking into.
Because there's so much room for error with that.
Yeah.
You can, I was talking at this Q&A last night about that, how the tightrope is, on one side you have how meticulous you want to be. So all the things that make somebody who they are, all those little gestures and the way that they speak, and especially with Elvis, who either people have this caricature idea of him or they have, they're obsessed and they've seen every bit of the footage. So that's that side, and then the other side is his spirit and his soul and the humanity. And if you neglect either one of those, then you miss,
Right.
So for me, thankfully, I had a year and a half to prepare, and that 6 months during COVID where I just stayed in Australia, and that allowed me the time to just really.
That's an unusual situation, to suddenly you're starting a movie and then all of a sudden you're shutting it down, which gave you all that much more time to even dive further into it, I imagine.
Yeah, it did. It really. I had a year before that where I tried so many different things, and I worked with so many people, and I mean, just getting to have all those conversations with Baz, and then my incredible movement coach, Polly Bennett, and singing coaches and dialect coaches and karate instructor and all of that. But then that 6 months where I was locked in my hotel room by myself, it suddenly felt like I was taking, it became like soaked into my marrow in a way,
Yeah, exactly. What I loved about it, it wasn't what you might expect, a movie called Elvis and being straight down the thing there. It was really interesting, focusing on his life and then what happened, the two different parts of it there, the early years and then the later years. Now you sang, it is your voice we're hearing for much of the first part of the movie, the younger Elvis. That's right,
all the
right?
50s, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't a singer beforehand, so
I know.
nerve-wracking.
So I mean, it was so impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, you
thank
could
you.
not tell the difference. You really channeled him, I think.
Oh, thank you, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult was that to get that just right?
It was very difficult. It's it's one thing to just not be a singer and then to take on something where you're singing, but then I'm going, oh, I'm playing Elvis Presley. So it was really, it was the thing where I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and have a certain line in my head and go, how does he sing that certain word?
Right.
And then I would just obsess about that word and try to figure out how I could get my voice to sound like that. And so I don't know how I would have done it without the amount of time that I had, because it allowed me to obsess about one song for a long time and then move on to another. And it's sort of like you got a bunch of spinning plates that you're trying to.
Yeah, knowing you're going to do
time.
this, did you get any sleep, or you were always 24/7 like?
It was pretty full on. Yeah. I really, I'd wake up every morning with my heart pounding.
Really?
At about 3 in the morning, at least. Yeah. And
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was.
That's a lot to carry around for a role. I don't think you've probably ever done that with another acting role that you've had.
No. But it also is the greatest joy that I'd ever had.
Yeah.
So I miss it a lot. It's that combination of terror and it feels like you're going on a roller coaster every day where you're terrified, but the ride is so amazing.
Yeah. I'm wondering how much, I know you did all this prep and research and everything. Did you watch all of his movies?
Yeah.
You did. You watched all of them.
Yeah,
Even Kissing Cousins?
Even Kissing Cousins, yeah. 'Cause the wild thing is you would find a moment where suddenly he has an authentic laugh.
Yeah.
Or he does something that you go, oh, I can take that little bit there of how he touched his face, or
Right.
how he laughed, or how he smiled in that moment, or any one of those things. So I found that inspiration would come from anywhere. So I was constantly watching for 2 years.
Denzel Washington was a key. You were so good in The Iceman Cometh on Broadway, which, you know, there you are on Broadway with Denzel Washington and that cast. And I understand he sort of stood up for you with Baz Luhrmann, the director here. And
Yeah, he didn't tell me he was going to do that either, but he heard that I had screen tested, and so he called Baz, and he sort of vouched for me, and that I'm grateful to him forever for that. For sure.
wow, I mean,
He's my hero. Getting to do that play with him, that's the moment that changed my whole career, was
doing that play. I imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, when you get to do O'Neill on Broadway, that's a big deal.
Yeah, just getting to learn from the other actors in the rehearsal room,
Yeah.
and see that there's no one right way to do a scene.
Right.
You know, that was the thing with Denzel, watching him on stage. He'd do some of the most brilliant acting I'd ever seen in my life. Something physical that he would do, or the way he would say something, and then you'd get a reaction out of the audience, and everybody knew it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it again the next night.
Really?
Instead, he did something different.
Wow.
And he kept newly alive every night. And there's something inside, I think, a lot of us actors, where you kind of think, I got to figure out the perfect way to do the scene. And that was one of those great lessons. And there is no perfect way to make art. You know, you just stay alive, stay present.
Do you like doing stage?
Yeah, very much so.
I know you did here at the Geffen Playhouse, Death of an Author.
Yeah.
And you know, that must have been an interesting experience too. I mean, it's completely different than doing movies, TV, and everything else that you've done.
Because you're only as good as you are that night.
Yeah.
So you can't rest on your laurels at all. And you have one night where you think, I'm the worst actor in the world. And then the next night you go, oh, this is what it means to be an actor. And you suddenly feel some vein of truth that you didn't ever feel in that scene before. And so Denzel and I had a lot of conversations about that, about how when you do theater, that's how you really can grow as an actor.
Did you always start out wanting to be an actor, or did you?
I was a very shy kid.
Yeah.
Grew up in Anaheim, and I stumbled into doing extra work.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents had tried to put me in sports and different things, but I didn't really like to be around other kids, and I was very introverted. And great idea to be an actor.
That's tough when you're a kid, not wanting to be around other kids.
Not wanting to be around other kids. I would be at elementary school, and I would walk home every day and eat lunch with my mom.
Really?
That was the type of kid I was. I
Wow.
would leave all my friends, and I'd go home, and I'd watch TV and eat lunch with my mom, and I'd walk back to school.
Okay.
So I was really introverted. And then I got on this set when I was a kid. suddenly something clicked where I felt as though I'd found my tribe. And it started to break me out of my shell. And there was something in being able to explore all the emotions that you maybe repress, and all the shy things of self-consciousness when you're able to embody someone else and then release these bits of yourself that have been held back, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it was cathartic at a young age, and I got into the acting classes, and
Wow.
that's what then shifted it to this obsession with craft, because I started getting around acting teachers like Larry Moss or Howard Fine here in LA, or Terry Knickerbocker in New York, who I heard about through Sam Rockwell, and these people that I would find the actors that I really admired, and then I'd look at who do they study with. So I found Larry through reading a book that Leonardo DiCaprio had been on the back of this book, and he gave a quote about Larry's book.
Oh, wow.
And I found out that Leo started working with him around the time of Aviator. And so I wrote Larry this long letter when I was 15 and said, I would just love, I know I can't afford it, but I'd love nothing more than to work with you. And then he and I ended up working together on Death of the Author for the first time.
Wow.
So the first play, I gave him my entire paycheck from that play, and because I got paid nothing. And we coached for that. And it moments like that changed my life, because having mentors and having people who can help you navigate those moments where your technique is off, and you go home and it's like nails on a chalkboard when you have those moments in front of a camera that are inauthentic.
Yeah.
You know, when you just don't feel truthful. And I used to think that I used to think that when you did a scene that you felt was not truthful, that you just weren't a good actor. But then I realized it's not that, it's just that your technique is off. And so it kind of released this idea of you're either good or bad, but rather, okay, just hone your technique. And it made it's an empowering sort of thing that I got at a young age.
Wow. What do you get from working with somebody like Tom Hanks?
Oh, he's just, not only is he an amazing leader on set, like that's one of the qualities I learned a lot from him, is how generous he is and how inclusive he is and collaborative, that he's not jaded, and he's been doing this so long, and I could easily see how somebody who's done the same thing for a long time and become a master at it to maybe not have time for other people, but he makes time for everybody. He's kind to everybody. He keeps morale on the set really high. And then on top of that, he would do things that I never expected. Mm-hmm. And so a moment that I may think would be really big, he would be extremely subtle. Yeah. And I'd just see that twinkle in his eye. Or another moment where I thought this might be a subtle moment, suddenly he'd do something comic and change something in a way that suddenly had me, completely surprised by the humor that he could find in something. And
wow.
So there's a lot to learn from him.
I'm also curious, you worked with Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
In one of, not just my favorite movie of that year, because it's well documented on Deadline here. I thought that was the greatest. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I just think he's an amazing director, just so original. And you, of course, were Tex Watson in that. But what was that like?
That was a dream come true for me.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time. I was 12 years old when I saw Pulp Fiction. And I was driving, at that time, my mom and I would drive up to auditions in LA, and so we'd have a 2-hour drive, sometimes in traffic. And I printed out the Pulp Fiction script, and because it dawned on me that somebody wrote these words. And then when I learned, oh, Quentin wrote these words. Yeah. And they're so good. The dialogue is so amazing. That's the first time that part of filmmaking dawned on me. And then, wildly inappropriate, but I would read the Royale with cheese and all that, to my mom out loud. And I'd be quoting the entire movie. And so it was always this thing that I had inside me where, because I was big into goals as a kid. I was a Tony Robbins fan and different things. And so I would make these big dream boards and things. And that was the top dream that I had since I was 12, was work with Quentin Tarantino.
And what are the odds that you got to do it?
I just have to pinch myself every day.
And it's kind of an interesting character to have to play too. I mean,
yeah.
It's sort of fictionalized, but it's a real guy.
Yeah, those are the characters that are, I always feel a bit. I feel reticent to get close to them, but you have to in order to not judge them.
Right.
And so I had to do a ton of research and try to really get into the mind of Tex and what that was like being at Spawn Ranch with Manson and you know what taking that amount of drugs and then having somebody, you know, imparting things that you feel are prophetic in a way into your subconscious and how that may change you. And so I really had to get into his mind. Yeah, that was a wild one. It was really surreal.
Yeah, well, this is like, you know, when I look at your early career, let me read off some of these things that you did. Your career could have gone a different way. iCarly, Hannah Montana, Zoe 101. You were always a heartthrob in a lot of these. The boyfriend here. Ruby and the Rockets, and you know, those kind of shows. Now, a lot of actors that would have those breaks, and they were breaks, you know, to get those kind of roles, might get stuck in them. And you're completely the opposite of it. You've taken, and I can tell talking to you here, how seriously you take it too. But what was that like, that world of getting into acting on those kinds of...
At first, I was a kid, so it was the idea of being able to make $100 a day and just walk around in the background on a TV set was blew my mind.
It had to be a dream, right?
Yeah, and then to
check it off that board.
Yeah, completely. And then to start seeing how films are made, and then I started falling in love with the camaraderie of a set, how everybody's coming together for this one vision, and I became sort of addicted to that. And then as we were talking about craft, and then, you know, I like anything where you can practice and get better at something. So I became obsessed with guitar at a young age, and I would play 8 hours a day, and my fingers would bleed, and I'd super glue them shut, and I'd keep playing. And
you teach yourself?
What'd you say? Oh yeah, I teach myself.
Yeah. Wow.
I just listening to Jimi Hendrix records and things, and I'd play that way. But so I think that love then just carries through where I was just talking before about that, how advice that somebody gave me at a young age was just make it about the work, not about any of the noise around it. And if you focus on the work, then that's all that matters, because all the rest of it is, there's fun days and there's days where you're exhausted or whatever, but if you just focus on being as truthful as you can, then that's fulfilling in and of itself.
That seems to be the best advice, because when you're playing somebody like Elvis, you saw what traps he fell into, and what happened to him, and what can happen to so many people in show business. I mean, it can really beat it out of you.
It's so true. One of Elvis's close friends told me that he said, I really feel my friend would be here today if he had truly, towards the end of his life, been challenged in his work. And so if he'd been able to tour the world, if he'd been able to make films that actually challenged him, and that breaks my heart every day, because I want that for everybody, to have that fulfillment of being able to have the challenge that then makes them rise and then feel fulfilled in that, you know.
Oddly enough, through you, Elvis is having that moment.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know, clearly right now. And, and when you say that, it's kind of poignant that he himself didn't get to experience it. I mean, even in this film, you know, where they're talking about maybe he would do A Star Is Born with Barbra Streisand.
Yeah, how great would that
Can you
been?
imagine what that would have been?
That would have been so incredible.
And Colonel Parker, being Colonel Parker, made sure he didn't do that. And you know, some of those movies at the end were not great, and that was sort of sad to watch.
It was sad to watch.
But what was the single biggest challenge in taking on that role?
I think it was what I was talking about earlier. It was the balance of the external to the internal of it all, and it's that tightrope where you feel like you have so far to fall, and it was also managing my own fear around it, because every day I felt, certain days I just, you know, I was almost crippled in preparation sometimes, because you see so much footage out there, and I'm trying to hold every bit of information. So I read every book that was written on his life, and then I'd write the quotes on the walls, and I'd try to keep those in my mind and keep his entire life in my mind, and keep the meticulous of his body and his voice and his every gesture, but then it needing to always be connecting to my soul and my own personal emotions, and so it's the balancing, bringing those two together, and not losing either,
Wow.
Yeah.
So next we're going to see you in Dune Part 2?
Yeah.
Did you shoot that already?
I shot that.
How fun was that?
God, it was one of the times of my life.
Who are you playing?
I played Fade.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So, yeah. And Denis is just, I would do anything for that man. I love him so much.
He's an amazing director, too. I
Amazing
mean, look at all
director.
these directors you've already worked with, Quentin and Denis and Baz. And,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
I'm filming a movie with Jeff Nichols right now. And,
He's amazing,
he's
too.
amazing. I feel so grateful.
Well, grateful we are too that you got to play this role and get this kind of acclaim, which gives you all these opportunities going forward to check those boxes off that dream board.
Yeah, I'll have to show you that one day. I got it somewhere.
Love to. Thank you, Austin.
Oh,
Thanks
thank
for
you,
joining
man.
us.
Nice to see you.